Day one of the legal tampering period in the NFL. Madness as usual. It actually started earlier than that. It started yesterday. It was kind of crazy Sunday as well. We're taping this on Monday afternoon, 5:18. It's the All 32 pod. Mike Giardi, Will Parkinson alongside as always. Reminder, this show brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. And money flying left and right and crazy. And look, as I mentioned, Sunday, names started going off the board again, and you're like, man, free agency is just going to be, it's just not the same. Well, turns out, the guys that were still out there, they're getting paid a lot of money. A lot of people changing places and getting big dollars.
Yeah, no, it makes look, some of the deals make sense, right? I think the markets established themselves, right? A lot of the extensions we saw yesterday and some of the early deals today, and then we followed suit with, hey, if you're the same position, somewhat similar production and age, none of that's shocking. I would say like Nick Bolton got $15 million, so Jamie Sherwood got $15 million. Stevens from the Jets just got $12 million, so Nate Hobbs got $12 million more years, right? And Trayvon Morin got $17 million. I'm sure Javon Holland will get more than $17 million. That's all. All those things are normal. I would say there's been 4 or 5 deals today. We'll talk about one of them with the Patriots. It was really yesterday where I felt like you didn't have to do that. Like it was like, wow, money had talk. And we see that all the time in free agency. But again, people are spending boatloads of money. The cap's going up and it's going to keep going up. Mike, this feels a little bit like, it's a weird comp, but stick with me here. In 2012 or 2011, I believe, the NBA salary cap had like this insane boom. Yeah. And I remember the Nets gave Gerald Wallace and like 4 dudes from the Blazers and all these guys like crazy money. You're like, KG's making $12 million. Why is Gerald Wallace making 10? Yep. This is what happens. That said, you don't have to do that. But some teams need to fill roster spots and they need to put a competitive, product out on the field. And some good deals today. Some other ones, like I said, that are mind-blowing. I'm just going to start with this one. We have to talk about this Javon Kinlaw deal quickly.
Yes.
Javon Kinlaw last year was arguably, him and Michael Clemens were a big reason this team declined so much on defense. Javon Kinlaw, every snap, Mike, and I'm not just saying this because it didn't work with the Jets, every snap, same thing. He would shoot a gap and he would guess, and once in a while it would look really good, right? He had 4 sacks, I think, or something like that, and a couple TFLs when he guessed right. The other 98% of the time, he abandoned his responsibility. You talk about people chasing sacks, chasing TFLs in a contract year. One of the more selfish players I've watched, just from a football scheme perspective, like abandon the scheme, would jump off sides, would jump a gap. He did it against the Patriots the second time the Jets played the Patriots, where teams would go, okay, cool. We're basically going to run like a trap play against you because you're just going to open up this massive gap. The Washington Commanders gave him 3 years and $45 million. 2 of those years are fully guaranteed. This wasn't a, the Reddick being the first signing of the tampering period as well. Funny. But just generally speaking, that's the one deal to me that sticks out. And then obviously the Packers too, where you're like, you didn't have to do that. Like that, spending money to do that.
Yeah, Packers signed guard Aaron Banks from San Francisco. Good player. 4 years, $77 million, 63 through the first 3 years. So basically you're married to that. And then Nate Hobbs, nice nickel corner for Vegas, gets 4 years and $48 million from Green Bay. Again, big numbers. We'll get to some of the other moves, although we're really going to save much of this for later in the week when it settles down. Again, none of these deals can officially be announced until Wednesday. But let's talk about our 2 teams. You guys needed to fill a quarterback spot. You did. Patriots needed to fill pretty much every spot, and they're trying. Milton Williams is the big one, right? Milton Williams, was at the top of their board. Milton Williams was the guy they felt like, we got to get this guy. Chris Godwin ended up not popping free from Tampa Bay. He re-signs, and that was a big one on their list as well. And it appeared Milton Williams was about to sign a deal with Carolina. It got tweeted close to a deal. Is the deal done? And I think the moment that kind of hit the wire, if you will, and certain teams got wind of it, they were like, wait a minute, we'll go further. We'll go more. And the Patriots They made Milton Williams 4 years, 104 million, 26 million per. Guarantees in the 60s, 63, I think is the actual number that was reported. The highest paid player on the team currently, the highest paid player in franchise history in terms of the guaranteed number. Milton Williams, soon to be 26 years old. Look, they wanted the player. They told us they were going to be aggressive. And when the names kept coming off the board yesterday, or even before today, you really got rolling. You're like, they might still have all this money and no one to spend it on. They made sure that Milton Williams was their guy, and I applaud him for that. Like whether Milton Williams can take the next step in his development, because he was awesome this year, but he's a part-time player, remains to be seen. But like when you say you're going to do something and then you go out and do it, you've got to feel good if you're a Patriot fan about like, hey, we have an area of need. This is the guy we want. We got him. And in this case, money was no object. We went out and spent the money. You wanted to spend the money. We spent the money.
It seemed like the Panthers had the deal done. Some folks jumped that being done a little quickly. And look, I think it was done. I'm sure it was close to done. And the Patriots said, they probably went back to the Patriots and said, final offer. You hit this number, we're in. And then the Patriots did. Vrabel said it to us straight up that they're going to overspend and overpay for guys.
That's what happens this time of year.
That's what happens. I will say of all the signings they've made, the one I feel the best about the player, the age of the player, the potential of the player is Milton Williams. Do I love him getting $26 million a year? Obviously not. You love him at 20, but it wasn't going to happen, and it is what it is. At least
you said 25 million, and it ends up being 26.
I was just, in the ballpark. I did. I thought I was overshooting, and so I did not. Again, if Barmore's healthy, and we all hope genuinely, I'm not just saying that he's healthy just in life, let alone playing football. Williams can be your number two in terms of like, you hope Barmore eats up a lot of doubles, and Milton Williams is one-on-one a lot, and he could win. Again, really good player. There's definitely some projection here, though, Mike, and you're definitely betting on, I hope this is the player we got in flashes. He's never been a full-time guy, and, the Eagles did just do this with Bryce Huff. I know it's not the same thing, but it's a little bit similar where, like, breakout year in a sub-package role and, like, got paid like a tier one guy. I like the signing for the Patriots. Like, I really do. Again, those two, Spillane, Gonzalez on the back end, like those are four guys where like each level of their defense now has got at least a good player, let alone maybe potentially more, obviously, in the defensive line. The only thing I would just say with the Williams signing is, like I said, there is a little bit of a risk of just what's he going to look like at 60% snaps as opposed to, I think he was in the 40s.
46, career high 46.
Yeah, and like I said, but he's going to be 26. Age 26 season. This is where he should be peaking. They have a ton of money. They're not paying anybody else right now. So, like, you went and got a really good player. There's not really much to be mad about, but it also does change their draft stuff because does this take Mason, the Mason Graham I thought would have gone 4 maybe, and now can you really take Graham if Barmore's healthy? That would be a bit risky.
Right. Well, if you get to that point and they take Mason Graham, I think they'd be telling you a lot about how they feel about the potential of what's going on with Christian Barmore and his possible availability. But sticking with Williams, like, it's interesting because he's 290-ish. And as you mentioned, hasn't had to play a majority of the snaps because that's how Philadelphia has it operated, with Fletcher Cox and Jordan Davis and now Jalen Carter. Like, he didn't have to be out there all the time, but this was a big step forward for him. If you look at his, and this is from Pro Football Focus, which again, like, just take it for what it's worth, but his pass rush win rate was 24%. In 419 pass rush snaps, which is absurd. It actually led interior defensive linemen. It's a slight tick ahead of Chris Jones, who played 200 more snaps, mind you. But like, that's the kind of disruption that he's capable of causing. And again, had to do it in a defense, or did it in a defense where he wasn't the primary guy, the guy that you had to worry about. Like, he's going to get singled more often than not because you had to double Jalen Carter, or before that you had to double Fletcher Cox, or whatever the case may be. So it's a step up in role for him. It's a step up in expectation for him, but the talent is there for him to do it. Now we'll just have to see if he can, right? But that's as to your point, it's sort of like this is what happens in free agency. You end up paying a little bit more or a lot more in some cases. But this is one of those rare players who got to free agency at 25, 26, where you can project like the player's getting better. Most of the times in free agency, they're the older guys. They're the guys that are coming off injuries that for one reason or another, like they're sort of damaged goods, or a franchise is changing his scheme and he is no longer a scheme fit. In this case, no, they would have loved to have kept Milton Williams. Outstanding locker room guy from everything I've told, like high character guy. But they've got a lot of good players there, and got some players coming up underneath him that are ready to fill that role. So he makes a ton of sense for the Patriots and maybe less sense for some other teams elsewhere. So I look at this like the Harold Landry signing, which happened, was that Friday, I believe? Seems a little steep, even though obviously they have great history with him. Mike Vrabel, it was part of his first draft class. Gave him the contract extension, the big contract extension with John Robinson in 2022. And he's been a double-digit sack guy for multiple years now, including the two after the ACL tear in 2022, after he got the big contract.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I wrote about when his name was, when it was clear he's going to get cut, there was they were letting him shop for a deal. Pass rush win rate was 4.8 last year, which I believe was the lowest of anybody who qualified in terms of like consistent rushing the passer from the outside. And the tape kind of showed that. I know he had 9.5 sacks. I know he had 15 quarterback hits, but it's a lot of like cleanup stuff where Jeffrey Simmons did the damage, someone else did the damage and he was there to clean it up. I think he's a really smart player. I just wonder and I think Tennessee, I know having talked to some people in Tennessee, wondered about, he's just not the same in terms of his explosion, because he won with speed a lot. And now it's more about sort of, I don't even want to say technique, because he's not awesome with his hands. He just he's a solid player. He's where he's supposed to be, and that's paid off in the last couple seasons. So that's I don't want to say curious. It's not fair, because they couldn't get to the passer last year. Like he will help. And I think now with Williams, there's some games that can be run that maybe free him up even more. That was the one though, where I think gave me some pause, just because I'm not totally certain that he's that player anymore. But obviously they feel real comfortable with him, Will. And I think it's $26 million guaranteed. It's a 3-year deal, but it's really 2, and 26 is the guaranteed number. So again, have a lot of money, so you can write that check. I don't know if he's that same kind of player anymore.
I will give the Patriots props on Milton Williams. Again, it was worth the overpay, in my opinion. If it doesn't work, it's hard to kill. A player that has potentially could be a Pro Bowl level guy entering his prime off the Super Bowl. Like, I get it, a position of need. Like, to me, again, everyone overpays, right? Like,
right.
We'll talk about the Spillane deal a little bit. Again, totally get it. I think it's a good value deal. I mean, again, you don't really want to be paying guys that are about to be 30, but like, whatever. He's a good player. Those I don't.
Yeah, right.
And the idea of Davis, which we'll get to, I don't hate. I just think they wildly overpaid compared to it. If you look at the rest of the market, like DJ Reed didn't even get touched close to that, and like whatever. This is the one deal that to me was insane, and people will look at the stats, and I had Jets and Patriots people tweeting me like, what are you looking at? 10 sacks, 9 sacks, 12 sacks. Yeah, cool. That's awesome. I totally get it. He was the worst edge rusher of 68 qualified edge rushers in the NFL last year with win rate at 4.7%. We just talked about Milton Williams at 24, Mike, and this 4%. I mean, like, it's hard to rationalize how, like, it's really bad. And
Tennessee was not a bad defense last year. In fact, especially early in the year, they were excellent. Like again, that was the switch to Denard Wilson's defense, which is the Ravens Mike McDonald tree. Like they were doing that sort of thing. And he
880 snaps last year on defense, right? So he only won.
Math major.
Oh man, whatever. I'll get to it. Like
he didn't win very often.
No, he didn't win very often. And it's just, this is the one where it's like, he was going to bring over a couple of Titans guys or people he's familiar with. Totally fair again.
Yep. Another good guy, good culture guy.
Good culture guy. Again, it's not going to hurt them in a sense, because I think like you had the money again, you're going to spend it somewhere. And, if he can at least can he give you 6 sacks to 8 sacks next year? Like, that'd be great. I just would be worried if, like, I don't know. It's a guy who's, is he never been the same since the knee, and he's getting older now. And it's like, I just don't know why you had to do so much guaranteed money, in my opinion. That's, I guess, my problem with it. Harold Landry, the Patriots, makes sense. It does. Hey, could he be like your second 2B/3 guy, and at this point in his career, and help bring over Mike's culture and all those things? Like, those are fair. I just feel like, I don't know, 3 years, $43 million with like 26 guaranteed felt like, did you have to do that? I don't think you had to. Was anyone paying him close to that? That's always my question.
Right.
Like Milton Williams, again, the Panthers and Cardinals would have gladly paid him $25 million a year. We saw that, and the Patriots had to outbid him. Chris Godwin, even, like, hey, got out, the Bucs were still paid him $22-23 million.
Right.
Was anybody paying Harold Landry more than $10 million? And you went to 13 or 14 guaranteed a year? Like, that's just where I'm like, did you have to? Especially if he's a variable guy.
Right. I also wonder in this case, and this is just me spitballing. I haven't talked to anyone about this particular part of it, but when you started to, like, when you got the sense that some of these names are going to come off the board before they even got to free agency, and they looked at it and said, people know who Harold is. He's a productive player. Again, their roster is not good. So you're adding him as an upgrade on the roster in general. It's like, do we pay a little extra just for that? Like, we got a name people recognize. They're going to look at the stats. They're going to be happy with the stats, even if they're not watching the tape or digging into some of the underlying numbers. And then, is it also in part, and could be just 2%, but is it in part like when you talk to Milton Williams' agent? Well, we just signed Harold Landry. We just did this. We just did that. Like, is there some sort of benefit too from that point? Like, we added a name, and he had 10 sacks and 9 sacks. Like, you like, I do think that because I felt all along that even though money does talk, obviously, that when guys would look at the roster, and you're looking at the roster, and if the money's somewhat the same, you're going to go, this roster's not that good. Do I really want to pay the millionaire's tax in Massachusetts, live in North Attleboro, and 45 to an hour from Boston, 45 to an hour from like, I'm not in the city. Like, is this something that I really want to spend the next 2, 3, 4 years of my life? And I just wonder if
the biggest trade we'll ever see at recording this pod, Kenny Pickett for Dorian Thompson-Robinson in a 5th round.
Oh my God. The swap of mediocre backup quarterbacks.
Kenny Pickett's back in the north.
Kenny Pickett, 1st round draft pick. What that's an all-timer. So that's Harold Landry. Spillane. Let's talk Spillane, because they wanted Jamie Sherwood. I think you kind of got that sense. I think I got that sense. And Sherwood, I think, was able to use that to his advantage. Nick Bolton's contract came too. So
what do you think he would have gotten for no? I think he would have gone like bond money, 17 a year.
I think it's really possible. Yeah. And look, and this is part of the Milton Williams conversation as well, in terms of they're changing their defense. Patriots are 2-gap, like, hold guys up. We had bigger linebackers, that whole thing with Belichick, and now under Vrabel, it's more about getting up the field. One gap.
Josh Dobbs to a 2-year deal. So, just again, it's not that relevant. It's just, but Drake May, never. So sorry, continue.
So you start looking at sort of the change in scheme, and this is, again, part of the change in scheme is a smaller. Robert Spillane is 200, and he played at about 225 last year. He's listed at 229, but he's a smaller, faster linebacker. Gets downhill, sideline to sideline. He was actually pretty good in coverage this year. I think it was his best year in coverage. Again, as you look at some of the underlying metrics, but it's like they wanted Sherwood. Sherwood's 25, right? Spillane's 29, going to be 30. But this is a player that fits it, what they were going to do. So 3 years, $37 million. I haven't seen the guaranteed numbers on that yet. So my guess is it's probably more of like a 2-year deal in terms of the guarantees. But he's a really good football player. He stayed healthy the last 2 years, 158 tackles, 148 with Vegas. And again, here's the familiarity aspect. He was part of Vrabel's first team in Tennessee, 2018. Undrafted kid, played a couple games for them. And then later signed in Vegas by Josh McDaniels in Josh's second and last year that he didn't make it through in Vegas. So they have the familiarity of like, hey, we know who this guy is. We know what he's about. And he fits what we want to do. He plays with his hair on fire. I love the kid, the way he plays. but he's an undersized guy. He's going to fly around, and it's just pointing to and by all accounts too another. And this has been a big theme for them since the day Mike Vrabel was hired. Another culture guy, another guy who's going to set an example for players. That last year, I mean, that place was a mess. It's been a mess, that locker room, for a couple seasons. So Spillane at 3-37. Again, we talk about the numbers. You're going to get overpaid. He's a good football player, though. In the short term, this is a good deal for the Patriots.
I like this deal. I have nothing really to say. Like, it's under what Sherwood and Bolton and these other guys got, and certainly under what Bond got. He's a good player, not a star.
Nope.
Not a bad player, good communicator. Think it'll be good for him to get out of Vegas. Wears the black visor. He looks cool. Again, good. This is one of those, like, this makes sense. Did they probably overpay by $1 million? Sure. But, like, this is one that's like, hey, good solid starter.
Yep.
A lot of times in free agency, like, these are the kind of deals I feel like you want to be involved in. 3 years, not a ton of cash, but, like, he's definitely a better player than, oh my God, what's his name? Who wore 48 in the Patriots for the last couple of years?
Tavai?
Yeah, like, he's a better player than these guys, right? Like, he's like, okay, cool. And I remember he's done some nice things in coverage. He plays really hard. Again, he's willing to stick his nose in there. Very Vrabel-like pick. I just, to me, like, he makes them better. Like, I guess that's where I end on it, is like, he makes them better. And this is a division with fast running backs that catch the ball in the backfield. And when you play the Jets, when you play Miami, when you play Buffalo, you got to be able to tackle in space, and he does a good job of that. Yeah,
he absolutely does. He's a smart player. I was talking to an OC who happened to have they played them and had a game plan for him.
Tarvarius Ward. Sorry, we're just gonna have to keep doing this.
Go ahead. Who you got?
Tarvarius Ward does get Carlton Davis money. 3 years, $60 million.
Colts.
Yeah, with the Colts. So again, sorry, continue. Just, we always got to,
Yeah, no. Keep the people informed. Josh Dobbs. That's interesting, though. They needed a veteran arm. You can't go into the thing with 2 kids or 3 kids. You need someone who's been around the league and seen some things that can help these guys continue to grow. Talked about Spillane. So Carlton Davis.
You want me to start on this one? I'll start on this one.
I would just say this. Carlton Davis, I talked to someone who said miscast as the number 1, but in the number 2 role, especially opposite someone like Christian Gonzalez, like, I think his exact quote to me was like, he could eat. Like, in other words, people are going to shy away from throwing to Christian if he's playing at the same level he did last year. You're going to go to Davis, and Davis gets his hands on a lot of footballs. Last year led Detroit with 11 passes defensed. I think he's had 84 pass breakups since coming into the league in 2018, which is, I think, 4th overall amongst cornerbacks since 2018. So, like, I get it, man. And he's capable of, he likes to be in your face and wants to play man, but he can also play zone. And I think Christian can do the same thing. So I think he really gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of how they want to play.
Yep.
And look, here's the last thing before I turn it over to you. Never mind the money. Last year, they played Jonathan Jones on the outside, and John's super competitive, but he's a little dude and his body's breaking down, right? They played Marco Wilson a bunch. Marco Wilson got cut. They played Isaiah Bolden late in the year and Alex Austin, who they just signed to his exclusive rights free agency deal. So it's like a massive, massive upgrade in terms of, if you get the same kind of player that Carlton Davis has been, you've made yourself significantly better at outside corner opposite of Christian Gonzalez.
I like the player. I think in a number 2 role, you're right. I think that he makes a ton of sense. I think they have a really good duo on paper. Here's where my issue is with the signing, is that until 2 minutes ago, until this Ward signing, and I don't know that he's the same player as Ward. He's a guy approaching 30. He never plays 17 games.
Never played more than 14 in a game, and that was.
I don't even think he's even gone close.
Yeah.
look, he's a guy who's won a title. He's a guy who's experienced. He's a tough-nosed dude, talks a lot of trash, like really good. Again, good duo. He's a Vrabel guy. Like he was an Aaron Glenn guy. Like they make sense, right? He's a good player, a lot of press man. That's where he thrives. I just felt like they so overpaid for this. Why was he not a 3 for 48 guy? I had him pegged at 1 for 12, 1 for 11, which is kind of what he was at last year, essentially. And he said he wanted to get paid and all that stuff. And that's fair. I just didn't think that last year's tape was, I'm going to get a boost of $9 million a year. It felt like could New England have like waited for 3 for 45 or done like a shorter term deal? And again, we'll see the structure of it and all those different things. I feel like this was the biggest overpay for them. This and Landry felt like good players that aren't getting younger. And I don't know that they needed to go that far on those guys.
So it's 34.5 million guaranteed. So to me, it's a 2-year, again, we're sort of, before we see the structure of the contract, that's an indication to me that it's a 2-year deal with negligible, money invested fully in year 3. So, I mean, he's shown no signs of dropping off his level of play. It's just, to your point, and as I was saying there, he hasn't played 14 games since 2019, I believe. Played 13 last year.
Yeah, the broken jaw, right?
So you pretty much can just count on he's missing 4 or 5 games every year. That's why having someone like Austin, who showed some signs of development last year behind him, makes a little bit of sense. Bolden is under his rookie year deal, 6th or 7th round pick. So I don't know what the ceiling is there. He's a pretty fast player. But I don't hate it. Drafted Marcellus Dial last year late from South Carolina as another corner who's already earned a role on special teams. I'm trying to think. Do we miss any? Oh, Morgan Moses is the last one.
Yeah, I'll start with Moses.
Go ahead, do it.
Moses is Patriots fans will love this dude.
Yep.
He is going to play through just horrible injuries every week. It's like he's going to tear a pec, dislocate his knee, and break his jaw, and he'll be out there and he'll look like the Michelin Man with casts on, all that stuff. Morgan is tier 1 dude. You'll love covering him. Tough as nails, great for the locker room, great for the O-line room. But I kind of started with the lead there that, unfortunately for Morgan, especially the last 2 years, he's gotten really hurt, really, really badly hurt, and he plays through it, and he plays still at a decent level. But my only fear, and this was, I think, I would say the Jets had a similar fear, is that they wanted him back, no question. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they didn't want him back. But I think they were nervous to go more than maybe a year, maybe 2, because he went from always playing and the Iron Man, never missed a snap, to last year tears the pec and he plays through it. 2 years ago with the Ravens, but then has surgery, misses the whole offseason with the Jets this year. Gets in the Patriots game, got rolled up on. Yeah. Ended up having a lot of stuff going on. He got clear with the doctors and then came back, and wrist injury, elbow injury. He said one game he was playing with no feeling in either of his arms. He's just out there just fighting through it. Again, I think the worry would be for an O-line that's looking for some cohesion. It's tough to bet on him for 17 anymore, but he'll be a good player. I think, again, they gave him more money than he was going to get with the Jets, but they needed to. They need offensive line help. You can kick on Wenu into right guard now and keep him there where he's actually a really good player, not just a league average guy. I think the right side of your line should be much better. It's more of just the worry with Moses, and similar to Davis, is that there's no shot you're really probably getting 17. So it's you got to kind of build your roster as if your starter that's a higher paid guy now is not going to get you through the whole season. And again, that's fine, but it's just another hole they might have to address of probably still got to draft somebody on day 2 or day 3 for them and have Morgan Moses be able to help groom that guy. And maybe he sits out for, whatever. That's my only concern with the signing. Otherwise, he's a good player and a great dude.
Well, I mean, last year they drafted Caden Wallace in the 3rd round, tried the whole, he's a right tackle in college, but we'll try him at left tackle, goes back to right tackle, got hurt early on. Didn't really make any kind of impact, missed almost 3 months, but he was in a room without a lot of veteran guys, right? Especially at the tackle position. Chuks Okorafor was the one real quote unquote pro in that room. And, he took his ball and went home because he didn't like getting yelled at. So I don't think you have to worry about that with Morgan Moses. I think that will help the younger guys, even Veneri and Lowe on the other side, just in terms of like, this is what it takes to be in this league for a long time and to be a pro. So, yeah, I thought that was a place that they could go and should go, especially after Ronnie Stanley doesn't even get the free agency. And then Dan Moore somehow got the seventh. I think he's the seventh highest paid left tackle in football now. Or seventh highest paid tackle in football. I don't even think it's left tackle. I think he's like slotted between Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, right? Which is just.
Did I miswatch the Steelers last year?
I mean, he's average at best, right? Like
he's like I don't get it.
If you're look, the Patriots need a left tackle, and that's like people are still like, and I get it. They do need a left tackle. That's one I'm okay with passing on. I'm okay not extending myself to that level.
I'm of the opinion, and I've talked a lot about Will Campbell not being a left tackle. I'd rather play Will Campbell at left tackle and then just hope and be like, damn, like he's not amazing at left tackle because he's, as in the wise words of Boston Sports Radio, an upside down turtle.
Yes.
Then pay Cam Robinson and him $20 million or $25 million a year. Like that to me just screams like you don't want to pay. This is where you get in trouble in free agency and you pay average players. Or how many, maybe below average players?
You might be below average.
Year one money. And this is why it's so important in today's NFL to draft, develop, and extend your own players, Philly, and Kansas City and these other places, because like you get them cheaper. That's just the way it works. And you can do it years early. Like Josh Allen in the open market's like an $80 million a year quarterback, right? He's 55 a year in Buffalo, and like you don't think twice about it. I know it's different. I'm just saying like. We talked about even Sherwood, right? Sherwood on the open market would have gotten 16, 17. The Jets got him at 15. And that still feels like an overpay. So, yeah, it's just kind of the way it ends up rolling.
Before we talk about the Jets, because we've been prattling on about the Patriots now for 30 minutes because they were very active. A reminder, Prize Picks is awesome. Duh. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. App really easy to use. Create a lineup. All you have to do is pick more or less on a few players. 2, really, up to 6, for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday each Tuesday. Discount select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. The second half of the basketball season here, race to the playoffs is heating up. Prize Picks has got you covered, so just download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly. After you play your first $5 lineup, you can download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly. After you play your first $5 lineup, Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you, Prize Picks, for your patience there. Let's get to the Jets. We've talked for months and months about the quarterback position, and it became clear as things started to shake out, Will, that Justin Fields was going to be the Jets' best option if he got the free agency. Again, this is another one of those because Pittsburgh was supposedly in talks with him. He gets there 2 years, $40 million, 30 of it guaranteed. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing they have to do, right? I can't kill him for it. It's like this was unless they could have been in on the Geno Smith thing and wanted to bring Geno Smith back to New York.
Yeah, I don't think Geno is coming back here though. That's the problem is like he's the 21st highest paid quarterback in the league, right? All the rest of the guys are rookies below him. Fields had nice moments last year. He is not a perfect player. I'm not going to sell you a bill of goods that Justin Fields is going to become Peyton effing Manning overnight. What's the downside if you're the Jets? That he sucks? You can bench him because Tyrod Taylor's there. That's the whole point of having – the whole point for the Jets was they need to get somebody that could either push Tyrod – as a quality backup because Tyrod always gets hurt, or in an ideal world, a younger guy that can he be your bridge guy? There's a lot of numbers to suggest Fields can become your Darnold, Geno, Baker, whatever that may be. All the numbers last year drastically improved. The Steelers were good when they were rolling with Fields, and they had a little moment with Russell Wilson, and it fell off a cliff.
Yes,
and maybe it may have fallen off a cliff with Fields, but that locker room loved him. The Bears locker room loved him. You mentioned it before. Garrett Wilson's going to ask out. Dude, DJ Moore had his best year by far of his career with Justin Fields.
Was mad that they were going to go with Caleb Williams over Justin Fields.
They want to be a team that's going to be super physical, play good defense, run the football. They've built that offensive lineup. They've got Breece Hall. Him and Fields should be able to be a nice dynamic duo in terms of running the football. He's obviously, I'm sure Tyrod day one of camp will be the starter, but like this is Fields' job. Obviously, I'm sure that's part of the reason of him leaving and coming there. I never understood why he would go back to Pittsburgh after they benched him and then refused to go back to him, even when Russ was really struggling. And it felt like everybody in the world was like, dude, put Fields in the game at so many different points, and they wouldn't do it, and that's fine. Again, there's no downside here. Fields is good. He's an extremely high-value guy, right? Because $20 million for a quarterback is pennies, as we know. If he's bad, he's going to get cut. It's like pretty simple. And if he's mediocre or decent, and then they go 8-9, I don't know, and Fields is okay, they're drafting a guy anyways, and Fields is your bridge starter for $10 million of real money next year. So this felt inevitable. This has felt inevitable for a while. I just don't understand. There's been some Fields sucks. Like, oh, he might suck. I don't know. But he's gotten better.
There are some passing metrics with him that concern you because he is someone.
The pocket stuff's tough.
Yeah, and he's someone who misses too many layups. And in this league, you can't miss the easy, quick, whatever, the 6-yard throw here, the stick. You have to hit those with consistency if you're gonna stick around as a passer in this league for a long time. And his athleticism obviously bails him out. But I think where they were, Sam wasn't coming back to them. Obviously they're moving on from Rodgers. What was the other option at this point? My question for you, you mentioned draft. You think this precludes them from taking someone highish? And I don't mean at 7.
42, maybe something like that. So I don't think it precludes them at all. It shouldn't. Tyrod's money falls off next year. Fields' money is really a 1 year. I think it's. I haven't seen it. I don't know. I'm assuming it's 1 for 20, and then next year's half guaranteed,
right?
Or whatever it may be. I think that there's 2 options here. I'm almost of the mindset you just sit this draft out, and I don't know. It's it's a good draft in the middle rounds to draft contributors. Now that they've picked 73, you're going to use pick 73 on a quarterback. If they love him, right? Milroe is the guy. Milroe and Shook are the 2 ones that make the most sense. Because I think, again, we've talked about Tyler Shook, and I think he has some upside. He could start in the league. And Milroe, there's obviously a ton of talent. And Fields and Tyrod are kind of good guys, style of play-wise, that he could sit behind. So with no intention of playing any football in a regular season game for quite some time, but I don't think it precludes them at all, and I don't think I don't think it should. I don't think that Morgan Moses signing with the Patriots should preclude them from taking a tackle. I don't. Armand Membu is a right tackle, so I guess it's a little bit of a dice throw there. But if you love Will Campbell, take Will Campbell. I wouldn't do it, but go for it. It's at some point these short-term solutions, you still got to get your guy eventually, and even if Fields turns out to be awesome, which there's a chance it could come on, could come on for you. It's a 2-year deal, right? So you don't want to be in the Darnold situation where he walks for nothing, but a comp pick. Yeah. So it wouldn't preclude, in my opinion, it wouldn't preclude that.
If I'm New York, I am taking out the tape of Philadelphia from 3 seasons ago when they got to the Super Bowl and lost to KC, right? Technically 3 Super Bowls. That offense for Hurts, I thought was simplified, allowed him to use, and I think Justin's legs are much better than Jalen's at this point. I think he has way more juice in his legs than Jalen does. Right. That's kind of what I would embrace. And if I'm going to do that, then Jalen Milroe, if he's there in round 3 and you like him, makes a lot of sense to continue to sort of feed hey, we can play this way for a little bit and develop our guys this way. It's just something that one of the guys that follows Philadelphia or is tied in with Philadelphia, he mentioned that. And I was thinking about how they played that year. And I'm I could totally see that. A lot of RPO stuff, made it kind of cut that field down for him a little bit, make it a little bit simpler for him. And I'm not saying that he's not a smart guy. He's not he's not someone who's been known as an elite processor. So
no, I don't think that was I don't think that was unfair. I think that was
yeah. So I just want to put that out. Because I wonder, I don't know that anyone's fully sort of embraced that with him. And maybe that is the best way to get the best out of him in the short term while you try to figure out long term, do we want to play this way or do we need to go find the next guy and have that guy in, for whatever, 10 years, 12 years, whatever the case may be. One other big signing from the Jets, right? A bit of a surprise. And you were kind of wondering about corner. Would they spend money at corner? And that some people had predicted Carlton Davis was a name that got thrown out there. Brandon Stevens from Baltimore. What do you make of it's 3 and 36? Again, we don't have the full details, so it could just simply be a 1-year contract, in terms of the guarantees. But on paper, it's 3 and 36 right now. Your impressions of that deal?
Yeah, I want to just read you one funny stat before I talk about this deal. The Cowboys have not signed a free agent for more than $6 million a year since 2015. The cap has gone up $135 million since that signing a year. Have not made a signing over $6 million. The Stevens signing is weird. I don't like. I don't know what to make of it because I don't know the details of the deal yet. But he was horrible last year. I mean, as bad as it gets. He might have been the worst. I'm genuinely serious. He might have been the worst starting corner in the league last year. But 2023 and 2022 were good. And he was really good in 2023 of expectations, good player, athletic, could play multiple spots, looked really good in the scheme. And everyone in that Ravens defense kind of sucked last year, the first 12 weeks. He was one of those guys that was like, oh my God. It's like, oh, great. Jamar Chase again. Here's another 300-yard game. I just am curious of two things. One, do they keep him at corner or are they moving him to safety? And two, can they get him back in a scheme with two guys who coach corners really well, obviously in Aaron Glenn, and then, and Steve Wilkes has done a really nice job in his time with corners. Is this the signing kind of looks bad on the face of it, but similar to a DJ Reed where you're betting on some previous tape and younger player, et cetera? I just don't know what to make of it overall. It does feel like an overpay, but again, they weren't going to play in the Carlton Davis market. So this is kind of what happens. Those middle tier guys get overpaid again. Younger, he's 27.
Yeah.
3-year deal, probably really a 2-year deal. It is what it is. You're going to pay Sauce and his extension would kick in 2 years. So I don't love it on the face of it. But at the same time, if you told me they got the 2023 version, that's a really quality player for $8-9 million a year.
You mentioned Sauce. I mentioned J.C. Horn earlier. We've talked about this, how Cincinnati has dug themselves a massive hole because they just wouldn't get ahead of these things. And now, Jamar Chase, we're going to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. And then as they're saying that at the combine, Myles Garrett turns around and gets a zillion dollars and becomes the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. And then Jamar's going to go, hey, remember how you said I was going to be the highest paid? Well, now the price that was $40 million, it might be 41 or 42. We saw the price for Garrett in terms of the trickle-down effect for the Cowboys, you mentioned, who just don't want to spend money. I mean, Micah Parsons has got to be $45 million a year. What are we talking here? The number's got to be massive, right? Have the Jets need to get on top of this, right? What are you waiting for? You can't tell me that he's not a part of your future, even if last year wasn't his best year. He's still damn good, and he was all pro 2 years ago. He was legit as what are you doing? Why are you dragging your feet? Make this happen. Same thing with Garrett Wilson. If you get the sense Garrett wants to be here and you're not forcing this down his throat, get it done, because the price gonna keep going up, because the cap's gonna keep going up. And all of a sudden, T. Higgins, we talk about this same thing. T. Higgins, if he becomes available, might get $35 million a year. What do you think Garrett Wilson's going to say to that? I'm going for that.
I think they get both done this offseason. I think that's why you'll see them be more diligent about some of the other things, and they want to retain some of their in-house guys. I think Sauce wants a layup. I would like to get ahead of it. It seems like Sauce wants the deal done. I think the Jets know he's a really good player. He's made 2 All-Pros in 3 years. He's 23 or 24 years old. I would get this done and try to beat Stingley and McDuffie, because 4 for 105 is what I've been saying. Stingley gets 4 for 105, it's going to be 4 for 110. Like that's what happens. So get ahead of it. From Garrett's perspective, I think it's much more likely they get this done with Fields going to be there and moving on from Rodgers and just
moving on from Devontae.
Moving on from Devontae and moving on from Lazard and the Packers contingent. So, Garrett wants to win. I know people think he's like didn't like Rodgers because of targets. It's not really what it was about. I think that they'll try to get both those done. I wonder the other two guys, Quincy Williams and Elijah Vera Tucker. You're curious to see what happens there. Guys that they don't need to extend per se, but
right.
If AVT's healthy again, he's going to get 25 a year. And he's right now, you could get him for maybe 18 or 17. And Quincy, you could let him say, hey, buddy, like, don't show up. We're not going to pay you. You're going to be 29. Or you give him 2 years and let him, there's a million things there, but they got to take care of some in-house stuff too, not just, acquire new talent.
Before we wrap this thing up, we got to talk about the Larry Tunsil trade.
We do.
So the Houston Texans, who couldn't block a freaking soul, and most of it was the interior. Most of it was center guard positions. They sent Shaq Mason packing. They just released him, and he might be at the end of the road. They trade Laramie Tunsil and a 4th-round pick in 2025 for a 2025 third, a 2025 7th, a 2026 2nd, and a 2026 4th. Now, I know he's dealt with injuries.
Yep.
That's been kind of part of the package with him. But what in the holy hell is the plan there? They don't have anybody in waiting. They had to play Blake Fisher at right tackle, and Blake Fisher wasn't very good for them last year. Like, I don't understand what the thought process here is with the Houston Texans.
I don't either. They've kind of they cut Shaq Mason. They've traded Tunsil. They were already pretty bad last year up front.
Right. I mean, it was a huge problem for them last year. It might have been their biggest problem.
I just wonder, it's like, do they look at those guys and say, hey, 2 years ago we got them all healthy, they all played really well, and last year was bad, and this is what we think is going to continue to be the thing going forward. I just wonder, this is my only thing with them, is where are you finding a left tackle in this draft? That's my issue. Like, tell me they get a right guard in round 3 or 4 with one of these picks, like, awesome. I got no question they could find that. Or even round 1, do they take a Gray Zabel? Do they take, whatever? Do they trade up for one of these tackles? But, like, you got to put a wall around TJ. And, like, as much as I love Braxton Berrios and Christian Kirk, and they wanted DK and all that stuff, like, that's great to get these guys with all the weapons. But if you can't block anybody, it doesn't effing matter. So, good move for Washington, at least on the face of it. They know where they're at. They got to protect Jaden. And, even if Tunsil's only good for another year or 2, it's worth it. It does make you raise an eyebrow whenever these happen. What does Houston know that we don't? Is his body going to start to go?
Mm-hmm.
No one knows you better than the organization you're in, medically, day-to-day, what you look like. And if he had a fall-off year last year, at least in terms of he wasn't an all-pro the way he's been in the past, and they were willing to move him for that after just signing a deal a year ago, it makes me think they know the writing's on the wall. And Caserio is a Patriot guy. It makes me think, would he learn from Bill and go, let's get out a year early? And if it doesn't go great, it doesn't go great, but, like, we don't want to be stuck. I don't know. That's just, everyone's taking the approach if it's a great deal for Washington, it might be, but just wonder from Houston's perspective, they know something we don't. That's all. So at least you got to ask.
Well, I got to tell you, I still think it's crazy as I read it again that they had to include a 4th.
Yeah, that was weird. Why did you have to attach a pick?
I don't know. Right? It does make you wonder about what they know, and maybe Washington has some sense of what's going on there if there's a physical issue. But that raised an eyebrow. I did not see that coming. Anything else before we get out of here that sort of surprised you today?
No, nothing that overly surprised me. I just felt like Chicago's been really aggressive, and they're just like, we're going to go all in on these guys and try to rebuild the offensive line in one fail swoop. But other than that, nothing really shook me up. I just felt like I was pretty floored at. I mentioned the Davis signing. I just felt like, wow, didn't know he was a $20 million a year corner 3 years later after signing. When he went to Detroit, if you told me he was a $20 million corner But yeah, no, I think the Tunsil one was the biggest name for sure. I also got to be honest, Mike. Like, is J.C. Horn a $25 million a year player?
He's not healthy.
He's
rarely
never really healthy. He's a great player when he's on the field.
Yeah.
I like what Carolina has back there in the back end now, but I just felt like
they're. I mean, clearly they're investing.
JC had another healthy season before giving him $100 million, but whatever. I get it.
I will say, Chicago, Drew Dahlman at center, who's a big PFF favorite, although some people around the league don't like him as much as PFF did. Grady Jarrett immediately signing with them as well after he gets released by Atlanta. You combine that with the Jonas.
That's how it works. Gets cut
right.
minutes later, signs a complex.
I mean, it was like 7 seconds later that thing was done. But you combine that with the Jonah Jackson and Joe Tooney trades, and like they've made a clear. Ben Johnson came in and said, "We can't live with this offensive line. The interior is no bueno." And Caleb Williams is 6'1"-ish, right? 6 feet, 6'1". Bryce Young is 5'9"-ish, 5'10", but sort of the same profile that Carolina took last year. We're going to build the interior. We're going to do a better job of giving him lanes in which he can throw and see. And I think that it says a lot. I think they've definitely put their money where their mouth is in terms of trying to beef up both the interior of the offensive line and the defensive line. Lastly, Sam Darnold to Seattle. Kind of saw it coming, right? After
coming, I will say, like, he needs a better agent. He basically got like a 1.5 years guaranteed. And with how bad this quarterback market is, it's like, I feel like Sam could have maybe pushed it up to like 36, 37 a year. I felt like Seattle, I think it's a good move for Seattle. He basically traded Sam Darnold for Geno Smith and getting a 3rd round pick and Geno Smith. And Geno apparently wants 45 a year, and Sam's at like 33. So maybe, you're able to add between that and a DK trade. Can you add 2 playmakers in the draft and totally kind of revamp this thing on the fly and get some of Mike McDaniel's guys, or Mike McDaniel's guys? I don't know. I just good move for him, I guess.
Yeah, my concern is their offensive line has been
bad, and Sam doesn't do well with that.
And Sam does not do well with that. So that has to be. And as far as I know, they haven't signed anyone of note on the offensive line here. Not that there was too many of those. Certainly not a tackle, but even a guard. I don't know that they've done anything. Not anything that I noticed on this wild first 6 hours or so. That's a wrap. We'll be back at the end of the week. Sort of we'll see. We'll see. It depends on what happens with the Patriots and Jets, but sort of a wider overview of what went down and maybe some deeper thoughts on some of the big moves that happened over the course of day one of the legal tampering period. And again, these deals that happened today, unless you'd been released prior to, cannot be completed until Wednesday. So it feels like every year we get that one guy who agrees to a deal, and then at the last minute on Wednesday.
I've experienced it with Anthony Barr back in the day.
Anthony Barr, J.D. McKissick did it a few years ago with Buffalo, went back to Washington after agreeing to a deal with Buffalo. Milton Williams apparently is maybe he was the one this year where it was close to happening in Carolina, and then he opts
Eric
out.
Cole out for the year. Tommy John.
Oh, baby.
I'm going to find a nice dark room and sit in a fetal position.
And I'm not laughing. I'm
Giancarlo Stanton needs surgery on
Yes, I was going to say, there are some things going on with the New York Yankee baseball team.
They get rid of the beard rule, and everyone dies. It's unbelievable.
Oh, baby. Hey, look, our third baseman, who we don't want to play third base, hasn't shown up in training camp and to play a game yet because he's still spring training because he's still not happy with the Alex Bregman signing and having to move off third base. Although Alex Core's like, dude, you're our DH. Bregman's playing third. Like, let's just deal with it. There it is. There's your quick baseball minute there as I snicker at Will's lot in life for the New York Yankees. Like I said, we'll be back at the end of the week. Reminder to like, listen, subscribe, rate, review, do all those wonderful things. We appreciate you. We appreciate PrizePicks. We'll see you at the end of the week.